Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is titled The University of Iowa INGEN Series of Satellites, A Mysterious Disappearance. This was human, not spacecraft. And did I just kill the satellite? That's a comment from a guest controller who was my girlfriend, fiancée, became wife. She thought she had destroyed the satellite, but I'll get to that in just a moment. As I mentioned in a previous presentation, I had worked for Dr. James Van Allen in several capacities, and this whole thing started out with the Raccoons, which were launched in the early 50s, and on the left is my display case, where I have a couple of these that weren't fired, and there's a very young Dr. James Van Allen on the right side holding the Raccoon with the rocket attached to it. Now, of course, the Russians had the first artificial satellite in orbit, Sputnik 1, quickly followed by Sputnik 2, which had the first instrumentation package, and then the U.S. launched Explorer 1. Explorer 1 had an instrumentation package there that consisted of 18 pounds, of which 40% was the mercury chemical batteries that powered the satellite, and that power lasted for 4 months. The rest of it was the radiation detectors, and there were 20 transistors on this initial satellite. In the picture there is Dr. William Pickering on the left. He was a program manager. In the center is Dr. James Van Allen, and on the right is Werner von Braun. Now, of course, you can imagine the tracking network wasn't very extensive back then. The satellite actually operated on 108.03 megahertz, and ham radio operators could pick it up as they did the Sputnik series. But they collected data, and the idea was, since the ability to track this satellite was quite limited, they were going to have a little recorder on there. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't ready in time. But Ed Freund, who was the head machinist there in Iowa City, and he actually helped me when I was building my particle accelerator with a few parts and machining and stuff like that for this high school kid who tended to hang around. We became friends, and I later, during his last decade of life or so, I gave him all his flight reviews. He had his own farm just south of Iowa City with his own airstrip and his own J3 Cub, and we used to fly off that airstrip, and we had a lot of fun. But anyway, this satellite operated for 4 months and came out of orbit in the 1970s. Ed later did develop a series of recorders that were used on the satellites, and actually, when I talk about the INGEN 5, one of the aspects there was we could record it and we could download the recordings of the passes. And he actually has one of his recorders in the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. on display. Or, they switch out displays. It was there for a while at least. I don't know if it's still there. But this led to some of the very early explorations of what would later be known as the Van Allen radiation belts. Now, the University of Iowa had a series of INGEN satellites. They called the first 5 INGEN, and then they determined maybe that's not the most politically correct, so they changed it to Hawkeye. But anyway, the first 5 of these used a unique method of stabilization. Since they were going to be operating around the magnetic poles, they put a bar magnet in the satellite, and that kept the satellite oriented. They did that on the first 5. The 6th one, they use spin stabilization. Now, here is the very first INGEN 1 satellite. It was launched 29 June 1961, and it ceased operation 6 March 1963. It failed to separate from the satellite there. One of the satellites, Solrad 3, which apparently is still in orbit. This is INGEN number 2. Unfortunately, it was launched 24 January 1962, but the upper stage failed and it did not reach orbit. See, this is the problem in the early days. The satellites weren't that good. The rockets weren't that good. If you got to orbit, that was great, but it certainly wasn't assured. Okay, then along came Engine 3. That was launched in December 1962, and it operated till August 1968 and came out of orbit. Uh, that's when it came out of orbit in 1968, and it ceased operation. Now, I was 12 years old at the time this one was launched. And I was a high school kid who hung around the physics building. I was going to be a physicist. I was going to be a nuclear physicist, actually. And this is Engine 4. I actually remember seeing this being built and coming right up next to it. It was in the basement of the old physics building, now the math building. But it was in the basement there. And I would wander around there when I wasn't in school. And I actually got right up next to this. This is before the era of clean rooms and stuff like that. You could actually get right up to the satellites and see them. Well, then we come up with Engine 5, and this was the satellite that I actually got to work as an operator on it and actually control it, which is really cool. It was launched 8 August 1968, and it operated till June of 71. And basically, the satellite was decaying, but the problem was we run out of money to keep it going. It was still producing decent data. On the left, you see it's all stowed, ready to be launched under the nose cone, and of course, on the right is the various instruments, scientific instruments. That are extended and that it used to collect data. Now, the interesting thing was they took this satellite, they put it in front of the physics building, and they put a bunch of arc lights around it, and the light was just absolutely blinding. And to tell you how intense it is in space, that blinding light only brought the photocells up to 40% of their operational capability. So that's how kind of bright it is out there in space. And this is the last one, which was Engine 6. It was launched in 1974, 3 June of 1974. By then, I had gone into the Air Force and I was kind of out of things. And it ceased operation in April of 1978. Now, I want to get back talking about the Engine 5. Now, this is up in the second floor of the physics building, the new physics building in Iowa City, the current one. And that is my girlfriend, fiance, wife of 52 years there in front of the control panel for the satellite. We have the tape drive there in the left side of the picture, right about eye level. Just a little bit higher is the keypad that we use to send commands to the satellite. Behind her is a scope that we could look at the data and various other instrumentation there for monitoring the health of the satellite. Across the room, about 20 feet away, was one of these old big printers that could chunk out a line of data at the time. And I had to go over there and see the printout of the spacecraft's voltage, the solar cell output, the status of the various experiments and that. And I basically could see the health of the spacecraft. And that was important because as it decayed, had to watch the voltages very carefully once it went into darkness. Now here is a color picture. Yes, we did have color way back then. This is a color picture. Same one, Chris there. And she would watch me operate the satellite. And one day I let her send a few commands. Now, you see that scope behind us. We actually, it was reduced to an audio frequency, and you could actually listen to the data stream on the satellite. And you could actually hear, you could hear the marker kind of pings will go ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And then as you turned the experiments on, that's what we controlled with the little keypad there. As you brought experiments up, as it came on the pass, you could hear it change. Well, there was one rate where you could dump the data at a very high rate. It was called high rate. It was 4 up. I remember that command. Well, every once in a while you'd get a spurious command, and that's what happened. I had her send a few commands, and somehow 4 up got there to go ching like that, and she jumped back. She thought she had destroyed the satellite. So I commanded 4 down, and everything was fine after that. And this is a picture of me. It's, these old Polaroid cameras, when you're pressing the button down, sometimes you jiggle it. That's me there, standing in front of it. But I want to talk to you about one thing that was kind of interesting about this. We had a antenna range The main function was on the second floor. That's where I was, of the physics building in Iowa City, Iowa, and North Liberty, Iowa, about 7 miles to the north, had the tracking station, and we had a microwave link, and I would talk to technicians up there. The blue arrow is the 60-foot receiving dish. The yellow arrow is the 10 kilowatt helical antenna that we use to transmit commands to the satellite. And the building there is where the technicians were. And I would talk to them on the headset that you saw there. And, they'd have the receiving antenna positioned. And as it would come over the horizon, I'd start turning the commands on and stuff like that. Well, the guy who ran the tracking station up there, and I'll use his name, Dunleavy, because there's probably people still looking for this guy to this day. He absconded one night, apparently, allegedly, you have to use that word allegedly, with a lot of people's money on a kind of a solar scam. And some of the technicians said this guy wasn't the very nice guy, the way he treated his wife. It was kind of embarrassing when they went over there for social events. But anyway, he disappeared. But we had a few instances where there was what I'll call anomalous propagation, where it was going on for like an entire week. And I operated this satellite for about a year and a half, and this is the only time we got it. But during this 1 week period, I could actually turn on the satellite 2 minutes before it came over the horizon. We were actually getting nice propagation over the horizon. So I would turn it on. We would collected extra data. I would have the thing operating, and then the first time I shut things off as it went over the horizon, but then I could hear the carrier going for another 2 minutes. So the next day, I got a little braver. I waited a minute, and then the next day, I was doing like 2 minutes, and that went on, and then one time in the middle of the pass, Dunleavy comes out there, and he didn't like me very much. I was kind of a smart aleck kid, and he comes out there in the middle of the pass, and everything's running fine, and he's listening in, and of course we're coming up, 1 minute till LOS, or calculated LOS, when it goes over the horizon, and I hadn't done anything. And, it's 30 seconds now, and it usually took a good 20 seconds to command all the experiments off before it went over the horizon. And you didn't want to go over the horizon with everything running. See, the satellite was getting old. When it went into darkness, I had to go back and forth between the command thing, the printer, to watch the voltage go down because the batteries were getting bad, the solar cells were getting bad. And if we were in darkness and the voltage was going down, before it would trip off and go into a safety mode, I had to turn off an experiment. So it's kind of like, where you're on the good side of the technician or not if you got your experiment turned off. So I would have to watch it, turn them off, and keep the satellite alive, the battery voltage up enough before it went over the horizon, then I'd fire it off. But okay, this day, back to the story. It's about to go over the horizon. He said, "You better shut things down." And I go, "Oh, no, I got plenty of time." And I guess the other technicians out there, they didn't tell him what had been going on, and they were just kind of laughing about the whole thing, quietly, of course. And then it goes a minute, and he says, "I don't know what you're doing, but you better shut that down." I go, "Oh, no, I got plenty of time." Oh, and I guess he was just giving livid. He told my boss that if I'd been in the room, I'd had to pick up myself off the floor. That's what my boss told me the next day, who thought it was pretty funny too. So a minute 30 after we had supposedly should have had loss of signal over the horizon, I start firing it down. And then, of course, I'm getting the carrier, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. So I just said, I could have let it run longer. I shut it off too early, and I guess he just got furious. Oh, well, yeah. My personnel got me in a lot of trouble over the years, but it was fun, too. And here's the University of Iowa Physics Building. We're on the second floor at the far end. And years later, I came back. There's my vet. There's my girlfriend, fiance, now wife of 52 years. And there's one last view of the Engine 5 satellite, and that was a very good satellite. And of course, you remember that very young picture of Dr. James Van Allen. There he is up in his really nice office up on the 7th floor. And a picture on the right is when they dedicated the physics building and changed it to Van Allen Hall. So I hope you liked that little story about the University of Iowa's INGEN/Hawkeye satellites. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.